Thank you for tuning in to the Behavioral Wealth Consulting Podcast, where our mission is to help you change your behavioral decisions by improving your financial literacy. If you want to live a more fulfilling life and get on track towards your long-term financial goals, it requires changing behaviors, developing a plan, and prioritizing your financial decisions. Now to your host and certified personal finance consultant, Richard Maricut.
Hello and thank you for joining me today for episode 6. I am your host, Richard Maricut, where my goal is to help you change your behavioral decisions by improving your financial literacy. For today's episode, I will be reviewing crazy common reasons why people don't save money. This is as described by an article written by the Frugal Genie. But before we begin, just a reminder, I am not a financial advisor. This podcast is for informational use only. Always seek out your own financial advisor for investment advice based on your personal situation. So let's get into some of these reasons. The first is declining mental health, right? So mental health, especially in the last few years, has been a topic that has come around in many avenues. Mental health issues usually comes with stresses from things such as work, school, family, or even personal problems, right? Some people are probably more genetically predisposed to suffer from mental health conflicts, and that also can be an impact on your financial situation, especially if someone has a huge amount of debt that is continuing to pile up. Declining mental health can often cause poor decision making, including poor money management. Some people cope with declining mental health by spending more money on things such as drinking, gambling, drugs, etc., to feel much better, right? Or just their way of coping. So mental health issues can prevent someone from making sound financial decisions. Fixing something like this starts with identifying the cause of the problem. One way to get out of this hole is to understand your own behavior, especially in your spending habits. Okay, identify your bad spending behaviors, such as when you go out for drinks when you're stressed, or maybe you binge eat to cope with burnout. Again, reflect on your patterns, and you'll typically find where that root cause is. If you cut out those habits, you'll find that you'll actually start setting more money aside. Second on the list is having a drop in income. A drop in income is one of those usual reasons why the people who cannot save anymore or are now not more inclined to save because of a recent drop in income. I mean, it can be a paralyzing moment, right? When your finances, especially if you've been going on for years with a certain stream of income, and all of a sudden it reduces or completely goes away, right? So now you're forced to abruptly change your expenses or cut out expenses. And, this could be even worse if you have a family and or children. A common question around this is, how could anyone save when there's nothing left after paying the bills, right? That's a question that I often get when I speak with individuals about starting budgeting or investing, is that they feel like there isn't anything left to invest after they pay their bills. Keep in mind, your finances will have a better state if you always have savings as part of your monthly budget. So first thing you can do is cut out the expenses that you don't really need, right? And this is probably one of the hardest things, but when you think about how much money you spend on eating out or dining out or going out to the bar or hanging out with friends, if you were to probably pull up those receipts and count that up for a month, that's typically where the money to save and or invest is hidden. So again, it's about budgeting, cutting down some of those things that you don't need. Another thing you can do to offset that, so if you feel like you've cut down on those extra things, the other thing you can do is find ways to increase income or increase sources of income. So again, it could either be things to improve your current income source. So if you're working a 9-to-5 job, it's about, maybe seeing if you're eligible for a raise based on your performance, seeking growth opportunities within your company, or looking for ways that you can generate income outside of your core job. I mean, now there's, a lot of different websites that you can find things that you can do on your own. A couple of my examples have been, weekend garage flips where, I go and purchase some things from garage sales, thrift stores, and refurbish, and resell them. And you end up making a little bit of side money there that you can either put towards paying down debt or putting money for investment and or saving. What's important is that you have to include savings as one of your priorities, or else it will always feel that you don't have any money left. Third on the list is delayed gratification. So there was a study done by, it's called the marshmallow study by Stanford, where at that time it was a groundbreaking psychological experiment that occurred in, I think, 1960s, 1970s. And this experiment involved children between the age of 3 and 6 of equal genders. The children were told that they can eat one marshmallow now or wait and get 2 marshmallows later. Basically, one treat now or 2 treats when the experimenter returns back into the room. All the children would receive marshmallows either way, so that wasn't the question. It was who would be able to wait 15 minutes before for the experiment before getting the second marshmallow, right? Or being unsupervised. So some children consumed the marshmallow the moment the experimenter left the room, right? So as soon as the experimenter walked out, kid couldn't wait, automatically ate the marshmallow. Some children were observed bouncing around. They were struggling a little bit, and then eventually still did succumb to eating the marshmallow. And finally, there were some who were able to wait the entire time and get the second marshmallow. The children who were able to delay gratification through this study ended up having better life outcomes. So when it comes to finances, it seems like society has taught us to only be gratified when we get things now instead of later. And that's why it has to be intentional if you want to prepare yourself for the future. Number 4, or fourth on the list, is accumulating high interest debt. So having debt is not necessarily a bad thing as long as you know the right time to borrow and to pay, and you're able to pay the money back. Okay, debt can sometimes be good for building wealth, especially if it's properly done, such as a mortgage. Right, good credit is always a must, as it makes lenders easier and safer. It makes them feel easier and safer for them to lend you money. Okay, so that's why credit score and credit in general is important. But while debt is fitting for some situations, a lot of people end up with high interest debt. So for example, credit card loans, they tend to snowball against you when you can't keep up with the payments. Suddenly the interest rate starts to balloon, and before you know it, you suddenly owe more money. That becomes double what the original debt was, right? I mean, we have upcoming holiday, Christmas. People tend to charge because, we didn't hold ourselves accountable to saving throughout the year for Christmas. So we end up charging. We feel obligated to buy gifts for everyone. And the credit card is an easy way to purchase things now, and with the thought of I'll pay it later. And then what happens is you don't pay the amount that you thought you could. And then you start off with a higher amount. And then before you know it, you're making minimum payments. And then those minimum payments end up taking a year or years to pay back. And if you happen to miss a payment, there goes your interest rate. Sometimes will double. And before you know it, you're paying, for Christmas that happened 3 years ago. Okay. So, one question I would, just ask you to think through is, when it comes to your own credit, when it comes to your own interest, do you know what your current interest rates are on all of your outstanding debt, whether it's your house, whether it's your car, whether it's credit cards, school loans? Do you know what your interest rate is? Have you totaled up how much more extra you'll be paying, assuming you're just paying the minimum payments off of that original charge, right? I challenge you to do that exercise and see what that math shows you. You'll probably be very surprised to see how much more you're paying for an item or items based on your original purchase price when you incorporate that high interest rate. Next is learned helplessness. So when your situation looks bad, and I know we've all been there, it's much easier to give up on hope than to look for another solution. Learned helplessness is a similar state where people attribute negative consequences to an internal characteristic that is perceived as stable. Okay, so for example, someone who has problems saving money associates that problem with something like, this is just who I am. Okay, then they will have a much more difficult time breaking that cycle. The individual who does not believe that they have any control over their situation do not direct themselves towards a solution-based mindset. Okay, it's almost like the I give up mindset, right? They would rather respond as, this is just my situation, as opposed to either getting help, seeking professional advice in order to structure their lifestyle to get them out of that hole. And this is probably why personal finance mistakes, such as properly battling credit card debt or improving your credit score, is so embarrassing. It's easier to give up on something than to fight it. And I think that's where, the circle of friends or family that you associate with, how often do you find yourself talking about finances and money, right? Probably not a lot. I mean, even based on my own experience, it wasn't until the last few years where it became an intentional conversation. And I think COVID had a lot to do with it, where people were looking to generate additional money because maybe their primary job was impacted. And so all of a sudden, people were almost forced to try to find other means to generate money. But prior to that, I will just tell you that, talking about financing credit score and even financial goals isn't typically a common conversation that people like to have. Mainly because they don't want to come across as the one that is not in a better situation. Well, the reality is probably most of your circle is not in a good financial situation either. They just want to project that they are. Okay. At the end of the day, each individual has to be accountable for their own situation. So whether they show a different lifestyle on social media or not, at the end of the day, what your personal financial situation is and whether or not you need to work on it, or you've already changed your behaviors to improve, right? All right. Number 8. The sixth one, I should say, on the list. This one is higher income later. So a higher income later mindset. The higher income means that you can afford to save money at a later time. This tends to be one of the main excuses and probably the worst offender on the list, because it rarely works out. Putting off things until a later time rarely works to anyone's advantage. And the reason is because so many other things end up happening between now and that later that the cycle of waiting until later just gets pushed out further and further. I mean, at the end of the day, who really knows what the future will be, right? Later is always the perfect excuse, and it's starting to become, one of my most disliked words, because that basically makes you feel like you have a way of getting out of confronting what the situation is. Referencing back to the sensitive areas that we talked about earlier in the show, I believe many people who have problems holding on to money is because that they haven't been taught about the ways to do it, right? And or they're not currently speaking and talking with their friends, family about how to do it, and so it's easier just to deflect that. And then the last one on the list, this is a popular one, the YOLO mentality. You only live once mentality can be the perfect excuse, similar to the one that waiting for later. But the difference with the YOLO mentality, or you only live once mentality, is that not only is it a top reason why so many people go into debt, we've become a society where materialistic things can cause us to spend on things that we really don't need, things that are, beyond our means. And at the same time, we're racking up debt in order to say we're living our best life, right? This is also known as lifestyle creep. Lifestyle creep occurs when an individual's standard of living improves as the discretionary income rises, where former luxuries now become new necessities. So I know I've been guilty of this most of my career. Every time you get a raise, you see that extra difference in your paycheck. Now that extra difference in your paycheck means you go out an additional day a week, or additional day or weekend a month, because you're spending it, right? Or you're now saying, well, I got a raise, I can now afford this, whether it's getting a new car when you really didn't need one, purchasing a bigger house when you really didn't need one, right? So whatever it is that is a result of a recent increase in income, pay attention to that behavior, right? So next time you come into some additional money, whether it's a pay raise or you hustled some things on a side business, whatever your first reaction is when you come across new money, typically will tell you if you've heading in the right direction of making decisions about your funds. If your immediate reaction is almost, I'm going to, spend it immediately, then that's probably how you'll continue to operate, and more likely will not improve your financial situation. So what expense does, or to what expense does living the YOLO mentality or lifestyle creep come with? Most people who are not investing, most people I should say who are doing this, they're probably not investing in a retirement account. They probably do have a 401k in their job, but they probably don't know how much they're contributing, or they may be contributing a very small amount because they want to have more money in their paycheck. Most of these people probably do not have an established emergency fund. So if something were to happen that was unexpected, they would probably end up having to charge it or borrow money. Okay. So again, living that kind of lifestyle where you're just spending as you get more money may allow you to buy more things, but it doesn't set you up for financial freedom situation. So keep that in mind. That's the topic for today. I appreciate everyone tuning in. If you enjoyed today's session, I'd appreciate you giving me a positive rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. It does help me get my message out to more users on how to improve their financial literacy. And for more information about behavioral wealth consulting services, please visit my website at behavioralwealthconsulting.com. And also, if you'd like to hear about a specific topic on future episodes, please email me at behavioralwealthconsulting@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Behavioral Wealth Consulting podcast. For more information on how we can help you design an effective financial strategy through behavioral changes, visit us at behavioralwealthconsulting.com.